And so when I say that, one way, so some techniques for evaluating emotions, and this is what I do myself when I notice myself kind of, sometimes do you ever catch yourself consumed by an emotion, and you can sense that you're acting a little bit irrationally, and you don't quite know what to do, but you're just feeling all kinds of strong emotions. You're not sure how to act. So in those situations, a technique for kind of getting control of your emotions again is first to start with breathing. I think I've talked about this before. Any kind of breath pattern where you consciously lengthen the exhale is going to help us calm ourselves down. It actually calms the heartbeat down, calms the mind down. So anytime you breathe out longer than you breathe in, that can help you slow down. And then if you're feeling a really strong emotion somewhere, a good technique to start examining that is to ask yourself, where in your body are you feeling that emotion? Because oftentimes emotions are associated with a particular feeling, like maybe it's you're feeling it in your stomach, maybe you're feeling it in your shoulders, maybe you're feeling it, or it could be just more in your head, or maybe like in your throat. Yeah. So anytime you're feeling a really strong emotion, stop and try to notice, where are you feeling that? 'Cause this is a way to start bringing our conscious attention to the feeling and to start critically examining the feeling. And then another question to ask yourself is, what is the texture of this feeling? So is it a dull feeling? Is it a sharp feeling? Because sometimes feelings, they can have different textures. It can be like a dull ache, that if you're in sadness, sometimes it's kind of more dull, kind of just radiates out from your stomach, versus anger is more sharp sometimes. So this is another question you can ask yourself to just start examining the emotion. And then you can ask, when have I felt this emotion before? Try to bring yourself back to other situations, and what how did I act on that emotion in the past, and how did that turn out? I mean, so this is how if you want to start trying to figure out how you should act on the emotion, start thinking about when you felt this emotion in the past, and then how you acted on it, and what kind of outcomes it came from those examples. So these are just some examples or some tricks and some techniques for becoming more mindfully aware of our emotions and learning how to critically examine our emotions. And because if I've done this myself, and I think I've talked about it before, but when you're caught in a really intense emotion and you walk yourself through these exercises and you really examine them and really feel them, then you start they don't control you as much. You're not as enthralled to them. I mean, they're still there, but you notice that, oh, there's this emotion here, and it doesn't consume you as much. So so that's something to think about the next time you find yourself caught in some kind of intense emotion, or anytime you can do this as just kind of an exercise in mindfulness also. Anytime you're feeling any strong emotion, just take the opportunity to examine it and see what you learn, see what you notice when you go through that process. So any questions about that? Any comments?
Uh, I agree with so much of what you're saying. And I would also just posit that when you do look back at a feeling and like, have I felt this before? Sometimes the next step for me this is this like a trigger from like the past thing that I'm responding to, or is this actually about the situation at hand? And I
Right.
think sometimes catching myself like, is this a situation at hand, or am I just like dredging up all the other times from when I was a kid that this kind of like vibe happened? And so I find that even asking that question is, how much of this is actually about the here and now, or how much of this is like over time, just, layers and layers. And and I find like that is actually been a great coping mechanism, or a great way to kind of get a handle on things before getting overly emotional, or letting the feelings get away and out of control. So before the train leaves the station, I can kind of catch myself.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Great point. And yeah, I think, yeah, like you're saying, especially anytime you find yourself having an what seems like an inappropriately intense response to something. Yeah,
Oh,
that's.
me? Never.
Well, I'm not talking about you. I mean, it's happened. I've talked about it before. I think. Yeah, I mean, anytime you have a really strong emotional reaction to something that, if you're surprised about how strongly you're reacting to something, that's usually a sign it's tapping into some kind of repressed emotion you have, or some kind of existing coping mechanism. So yeah, definitely that's a good point. Mhm.